What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Of course you're gonna know by now that we love going through some community concepts, especially when people are coming up with their own ideas for champions or skins. And since Riot has been expressing more and more of an interest in reaching out to the community for their thoughts, their ideas on how to improve League of Legends or for new content and all that good stuff, I wanted to take an in-depth look at some of the coolest and craziest fan-made champion concepts that we haven't shown before. And we'll be linking all the original artists in the description, so definitely check them out and show them some love. And just before we start, we have a quick message from our sponsor, ggesports.com. On their website, you play as an analyst predicting the outcome of esports matches, but you don't use any real money and you can win some real prizes. Right now, they're doing a revival event around the Worlds tournament where everyone gets 1 million of their in-game currency for free, which is a lot. And the more people join, the bigger the prize pool, so there's a lot you can win. Check them out at the link in the description, and let's jump right into the video. Now, our first champion concept for today is known by the name of Vanguard by Jens BENATSSON. And it's particularly interesting because Riot Games actually sponsored this concept as a project for the FZD School of Design. Jens's inspiration came from the idea of introducing a little more of the East into the game, but this time focusing on a little bit of a different direction. Right now, most of the champions based on Eastern culture are all relatively sleek looking ninjas. Jens wanted to do things a little bit differently, leading him to go with a design that had a much stockier build and was equipped with blunt weapons, like his shield or ball and chain. Since the aim was to work on an interesting design as opposed to actually developing a gameplay kit, unfortunately there is no gameplay kit that exists for this character. However, there are a few little notes that give us a really good idea of how Vanguard might function on the battlefield. The first thing to point out is his bulky form and armor. Riot is really adamant in the fact that for a champion you should be able to just look at them and get a really good idea for how they might function, and that's definitely true for this character. He's really huge and kitted out in samurai armor with 2 shields that lay on his back, which along with the horn on his helmet make him almost look kind of like a scarab beetle. As a champion, it's really clear that he'd behave like a tank character, soaking up damage for his team and being more focused on crowd control rather than actually dishing out damage himself. It's also shown that he can wield either one or both of his shields, which in game would probably work like variable amounts of damage reduction on an ability, or maybe giving him the ability to do some kind of epic shield smash. The last notable feature is his ball and chain, which apparently drags behind him and actually also slows him down, which gives an interesting or maybe a little bit of a frustrating balance feature for when he's using his shields rather than his primary weapon. But it also means that theoretically he might have the ability to deal some intense damage from a short distance in addition to the melee attacking that he might use with his shields equipped. Overall, I'm super impressed with this concept. It's really important for player-made designs to stand out from the current roster of existing champions, and the direction Jens took with this brawler is definitely something that hasn't been seen in the game before, particularly thanks to the Eastern culture spin on it. His use of color is really awesome as well. We don't typically see this sort of black and yellow combination, so he'd instantly be recognizable and unique on the battlefield, which is definitely something important to Riot and the game itself. Next up today, we have a concept known as Elliot the Swarm Herder by Leon Ho, a really unique looking champion from the Shadow Isles. The easiest way to describe his appearance would to say that he maybe looks like a really evil bug catcher from Pokemon, complete with a ghostly net, a big bottle of something nasty on his back, and a surprisingly cute looking insect sitting happily on his shoulders. Leon also took the time to display the iterations of his concept, moving through some really varied designs before deciding to go with a more youthful approach, resulting in him appearing to be somewhat of a similar age to Echo. Leon also designed some gameplay elements showing how he would imagine Elliot's abilities, how they might look, how they might function. Unfortunately, he didn't leave any particular notes exactly describing what each proposed ability does, but we can work back from the images to figure out roughly what he might have been thinking when he designed them. The first thing to take note of is this top left image with Elliot walking near a bush that seems to contain some little glowing insects. This means that his passive is probably similar to maybe something of that of Bard's Chimes. So Elliot would explore the map looking for new bugs to catch and add to his collection, giving him some sort of benefit in the process. His Q appears to take the form of a swing of his ghostly net, and it would likely be his main damage tool. Given the concept of being a bug catcher with a net and the proposed visual effects, this ability would likely have some form of trapping mechanism, like a root for example. There's also a bit of a smoke screen leading around the target, which could just be to make it look cool, but it could also mean that Elliot is trying to block vision in a similar way to how Graves does. And since Ride usually uses the W ability on a character for some sort of utility, we're guessing the top right image shows his W as it appears to give Elliot a shield. This ability has some kind of area of effect with Elliot as the center point. Enemy champions shown by the red outline seem to be hindered some way with some kind of debuff, whereas the green outline allied champion is likely getting some kind of a buff or a heal. This suggests Elliot is less of a straight up AP damage dealer and more of like a mage support kind of hybrid, like maybe Karma or Orianna, who can be played offensively or defensively and has a ton of utility regardless of how they're played. Elliot's E seems to show him sending out two huge beetles in a straight line, and although we can't necessarily see the end result after they might collide with an enemy, it's likely a combination of damage or maybe some sort of crowd control. Maybe like a knockup could be a really logical choice here. And of course, Elliot's final ability would be his ultimate, and we finally see the purpose served by the flask on his back. Elliot holds it up over his head and channels some kind of essence to an enemy, silencing them. This could be just a cloud of insects, or maybe some kind of poison harvested by them by the bottle on his back. There's a lot of room to work with here, and it's something that could be really awesome. My pet theory is that his ultimate could be tied into the proposed passive somehow. Maybe going around, maybe collecting all the bugs fuels his ultimate somehow by increasing the duration of the silence, maybe increasing the damage or lowering the cooldown or something, and helping Elliot to cast it more frequently. Overall, this is, I gotta say, probably one of the best champion designs I've seen in a really long time. It's super unique, really interesting, very compelling, and definitely explores a niche that Riot has never really considered at all before to our knowledge. Now our next concept is one that's actually quite exciting. It's actually a dual champion concept by DAEMONSTAR, and interestingly enough, this one was designed all the way back in 2014. The names of the champion are Marosen, the Cursed Soul, and Rosendo, the Demonic Soul, and DAEMONSTAR had the interesting idea that you could essentially only play as one of them. You would select which champion you wanted to use in Champion Select, and as a result, would not be able to switch during the game, since they are, after all, supposed to be what is essentially the same character. So let's take a look at the champions themselves, starting with Marosen. Marosen is an AD carry focused on the top lane, although could definitely be suited to playing in the mid lane as an assassin. His passive is one that would be fun to play with for those who enjoy RNG elements in a kit. It gives him a 20% chance on every basic attack to amplify his damage and give vision of his target for a couple of seconds. Marosen's active abilities are mainly focused on sweeping around his chain axe. His Q gives 2 slashes around him, and his W allows him to rotate into a tornado, dashing to a target location and damaging enemies in his path. His E is an extension of his passive, allowing him to mark and amplify his damage against enemies, and also gain bonus attack speed. And his ultimate comes in 2 stages, Dark Sphere and Dark Lance. The first cast is similar to his W, with Marosen turning into a spinning sphere of slashes that deal area of effect damage, although he can't move while spinning, and then after the spinning phase is over, there's a second activation of the ability, which fires a single target spell that deals damage tied to how long is left on the Dark Sphere stage. So if you activate it immediately after the first cast, you'll deal max damage, but if you allow the sphere effect to channel for a while, you'll lose damage on the second cast. Now the other part of this champion concept, Rosendo, is noted to be a demonic presence that's taken over the other half of Marosen's body, with a desire to kill Marosen to steal his body forever. And this form is actually a marksman champion. Passively, he deals splash of damage to opponents in a cone with his basic attacks, kind of the same concept as maybe Graves after his rework, or at least in a comparable sense. And activating Q will cause Rosendo to shoot behind him once, then in front of him once, with the first shot dealing more damage. This opens up some really interesting positional gameplay, and you'd have to play in a pretty risky way to get the maximum value out of this ability. His W is essentially a spooky grappling hook firing a demon spirit arm out of his gun that pulls an enemy towards him before turning into a blade that will slash them on the spot. His E is a teleport effect which leaves some black smoke at the start and end location of the ability. The smoke would decrease enemy armor and magic resistance by 20% and in return give himself half the amount reduced, although it only works if you yourself also stay in the smoke. Rosendo's ultimate is Spirit Blast, which allows you to knock an enemy champion's spirit outside of its body for 3 seconds, stunning the champion in the process. The enemy can only control the spirit and cannot attack, and moving back to its body will remove the stun. Now there's not necessarily a whole lot of synergy or interaction between the two individual concepts, so maybe there's a little bit to work on in that sense, but DAEMONSTAR did include his own quest. If the two characters kill each other in game, they receive a 10% buff to all base stats. Overall, the dual champion concept is something that is really cool, and it's done in a way that could potentially be very exciting, very intense, something that is just so wild and crazy, but it's also really surprising how similar this concept is to Kain in a lot of ways, considering that this character was actually designed in 2014. It would be really interesting to know if Riot maybe was inspired by this concept, or if overall it's kind of just a pure coincidence. Either way, it's definitely a really cool concept to take a look at. I love when these fan-made concepts do something that's just so crazy and ridiculous, the kind of thing that you honestly would probably never see in game, but is just really fun and cool to think about and explore. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. I just wanted to take some time here at the end to talk some more about what I've been doing with our sponsor, GGEsports.com. Right now we have a new challenge going with myself and Red Mercy and Bro Fresco. The three of us are competing to see who can win the most by the end of the month. Currently, I'm actually doing really well. I recently have been winning a lot thanks to my boys from FlyQuest and TSM. I'm actually rank 56 overall of everyone on the website. But with the revival event, it's actually anyone's game now, so maybe one of you guys could beat me. And of course, thanks again to GGEsports.com for sponsoring our content, and definitely check them out at the link in the description below. But either way, that's just about going to wrap up our concepts for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Definitely check out the original artists in the description as always. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.